GM, guys. And by GM, I mean good afternoon if you're on the East Coast, good night if you're in Europe. Welcome to the DeFi State, a weekly show brought to you by Hashflow. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Nicole Benham, the host of this show and head of community for Hashflow. Um, we are very lucky because today we have a very special guest, Eric Wall. Eric, according to his Wikipedia, is a Swedish researcher known as Berika, a former advisor of the Human Rights Foundation on cryptocurrencies and privacy. And Eric, is this the most recent thing? Currently chief investment officer at Scandinavian cryptocurrency hedge fund Arcane Assets. And
Yeah, hi, Nicole.
screw Wikipedia. I hate this. What's the most recent thing, Eric?
No, I left Arcane back in like March earlier this year. Actually, the most current thing is nothing. I'm just an unemployed hobo living my life. Like I don't have any affiliate. Actually, oh, sorry. There's one thing. I recently joined the board of the Starknet Foundation, so I'm doing some work for them. Other than that, I'm like a Twitter troll, blockchain researcher, investor. Most people I think just follow me as Berika on Twitter, and I make content for people, I suppose.
Yes, I love it. Also, Varun, you have to let me properly introduce you. Varun is Hashflow's CEO and the person who taught me about DeFi in this space. So what's up, Varun?
Doing good. And Eric, thank you so much for joining the space. I was going to add, when Eric says he creates some content, that's a massive understatement. I think he's got one of the best profiles and contents out there in terms of both educational and constructive criticism and trolling. So he's an all-star there. So I'm actually kind of excited to have the space and have him on the space.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Eric, I'm not going to lie. I was a little scared when I saw you in the space with Udi. And I'm like, oh no, did we lose him? And I felt really bad separating the two of you. I was there when you left.
Yeah, I misscheduled, so I'm not used to the current time zone that I'm in. So time zones are just I'm not good at those. So
what time zone are you in?
I'm in the British time zone, but I'm actually in Portugal. So it's the same time zone. Yeah.
Okay, wow. Well, the space that Udi has is still called FTX Funds Frozen with Eric and Udi. Yeah, you're here. I don't know how he feels.
Yeah, but Udi and I, we're going to do spaces throughout the whole bear market because there's going to be tons of those. I think that what we're trying to do for people is, this is one of the worst things that has ever happened in the cryptocurrency industry. This is like a nuclear blast, and now people will the people who survive, they're gonna have to be like cockroaches to escape this nuclear blast. So we've been through this many times, so there's some learnings that we have. So maybe we can, someone has to try to take care of all those vulnerable people. Actually, I'm sounding too paternalistic right now. We're just going to try to give a space for people that still want to power through this thing and want to stick to this to the end, and just give them a place to be and just help give people some comfort in this horrible bear market that we're gonna have to suffer in longer now.
Yeah, I think most people do want to stick this out. But what were you talking about that you learned during the last bear markets? And I don't care if you sound paternal. We want to hear it.
I was also going to say, Eric, might even be helpful to give some context with the FTX situation because many people still don't fully understand what happened there. So and there's a lot of speculation and crazy stories and such. So perhaps you can even shed light into that too. That'd be really, really helpful.
Yeah, sure. I can simplify it very easily. So Alameda and FTX. Alameda is one of the largest quant trading firms in crypto, and FTX is one of the largest exchanges. They had a joint empire, right, between these two entities. And all the customer deposits that were supposed to go into the accounts of FTX actually ended up on Alameda's balance sheet, and they just used the customer deposits as liquidity, and they made a bunch of trades and they acquired a bunch of equity in other businesses with customer deposits, and they ran this whole scam operation basically. The Enron liquidator that now is looking at their books says that it's the worst garbage fire that he has seen in his entire career. And the worst thing about it is that they were able to fool everybody. We had the Sequoia paradigm investing in this thing, and we had many of the leading cryptocurrency influencers in the space completely describing this as totally legit. I mean, they had the best commercials, like the on the Super Bowl, they were the ones with Larry David, and they had the cleanest surface and the ugliest insides. And this is one of the biggest collapses and biggest scandals in the cryptocurrency industry that has ever happened. And we are all sort of just mentally recovering from this. That's pretty much, that's how I would sum it up.
We're mentally recovering from this and watching SBF tweet letter by letter. That's what we're doing.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I thought initially that there was this for a moment there was someone that detected that his tweet count didn't change even though that he tweeted letters.
And what does that mean?
It meant that he was deleting some tweet at the same time that he was writing a tweet. So we thought that, and this happened the same second. So we thought that what was going on was that the reason that he was tweeting one letter at a time was that he had found a tweet that he needed to delete. But if he deletes the tweet, then these crypto deleted bots will detect that he has removed a tweet. So he has to tweet another tweet at the same time to keep for them to balance out. So, sort of like he ran his hedge fund by printing tokens out of thin air and putting it on the balance sheet so that no one would notice that he was losing customer deposits. He's doing the same thing with his Twitter account, that he's trying to make people not notice that he's deleting tweets. That's what we thought anyway. But then the latest evidence sort of implies that it's actually other people that are removing he has retweeted things and people are removing the people who he has retweeted. They have deleted those tweets. So it's actually retweets.
Lowered his count?
Yeah, that's what the current evidence is telling us. So it's not actually that. I mean, we know that he has been deleting tweets. Like, he's been deleting tweets which said that FTX was fully solvent and the assets were fine and all those kinds of things. So, I mean, I don't know what else he could actually be deleting that would put him in a worse situation than he is in at the moment anyway.
Oh yeah. What else have we uncovered from old tweets? Because I feel like everybody's going back and looking at the tweets of every single person who worked at FTX and trying to uncover things. What else have we been seeing?
So there's nothing super juicy. Like, for example, we saw that he's been deleting tweets where he talks about like tax planning, and it's sort of this whole thing that we were seeing recently, that he describes his, career or whatever, his entrepreneurship with FTX as a game. And it seems that he's just viewing a lot of his life like a computer game, like tax planning is a computer game. Running businesses is a computer game. Effective altruism is a computer game. Although I don't necessarily believe that he actually thinks that, because the effective altruism lens is the only way that I can even understand his actions. I mean, I can completely understand if you're saying, oh, you took a huge hit with your hedge fund and you might have to wind it down. But maybe if you borrow funds from your exchange and keep it a secret, maybe you can run this multi-billion-dollar enterprise and survive through this, get you out of the hole. And in the long term, maybe you can help more people if your goal is to just make a bunch of money and give it away. Maybe, like, if you're thinking about it like an effective altruism, if you have a 50% chance at making 20 billion and a 50% chance at losing 2 billion, then sort of the estimated value optimized approach is to actually make the fraudulent choice, take the risk, because your upside is potentially so great. I mean, it does predicate, everything comes on a narcissistic predicate, which says that if you make this money, you will be able to make the world much better than other people. So therefore, you are allowed to scam people. So there must be some element of, like, it's not normal effective altruism. It's like effective altruism merged with narcissism and a level of being a psychopath also.
Where did this term effective altruism even come from? What does it mean?
Effective altruism is like a ideological movement that's pretty big. It's all over the world. Can't remember who started it, but I have friends who are like effective altruists. I have one friend here in Sweden, back in Sweden, that runs a company that looks at. It's called Normative, and they look at like the carbon footprint of, like, they look at all the expenses of a company and they give them like a carbon or like an ESG score, and it's going great for them. And he's like a super nuanced person that doesn't do any crazy shit and doesn't do anything illegal, even though he uses also an effective altruism framework. So there's an effective altruism movement in Stockholm, for example. I've met these people. They're sort of like, I would sort of put them next to like the burners, so the Burning Man people. The effective altruism community is sort of, I don't know, felt to me a bit similar to that clique, so to speak.
Eric, I have a follow-up question there. So maybe this is going slightly away from the topic of effective altruism, but I was curious to hear, like, what does this generally broadly mean for the crypto or exchange ecosystem, and predominantly, obviously, around DEXs, because I think there was a bit of a splurge in the DEX usage of the last week and so, and obviously we are a DEX.
Yeah. So I mean,
is this what?
I think I lost you for a second there, Varun.
Yeah, Varun, I think you were rugged. You there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, lovely. No, so sorry. I think I was essentially asking, like, how what does this mean for DeFi in general? Because obviously there's lots of talks about like things being regulated more strictly, but at the same time, there's also a sentiment that, you know, do not custody your keys with CeFi venues. So do you think this is the this is where the more broader interest into decentralized exchanges is going to pick up steam, or do you think there's something that needs to be changed before we get there?
What do you want to hear? Do you want to hear my personal, honest thoughts here, or do you want to hear like the polished
no, just be
Starknet Foundation board member?
Just be as brutally honest as you can, because I think that also helps us, because then we know exactly what's missing. So
the thing is that, you know, this thing has impacted me in like not in a particular financial way, but it does. Like I'm one of those people that it hits pretty hard, and I think that Hasu had this great tweet that captured my emotions about it almost perfectly. That this thing is so bad that you don't even feel like shilling DeFi at the moment, because it's almost like you're at a restaurant and you're starting to talk about like table manners and etiquette, and then but the whole restaurant has AIDS, so it's sort of a bit too late. Like that's what you should have cared about, these like hygiene and stuff before you put AIDS in the soup. Like that's it's a really shitty situation, and unfortunately I think, you know, DeFi holds the solution to this. It does have the nucleus of a solution to this very problem. Like DeFi does provide you with continuous proof of reserves. Like every transaction in DeFi would not be possible if the transaction of itself didn't essentially satisfy the proof of reserve scheme. So DeFi is sort of the solution, but the problem is that, well, there's not many DeFi applications that really solves the fiat onboarding. So every DeFi application will sort of have to have some fiat on-ramp counterpart, and that brings it back into this more opaque entity. Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to interject?
No, not at all. Actually, I'll let you finish it.
Yes. So the sad thing is that, you know, we can build better exchanges. We can build ZK rollups, for example, that or you know, trading that is where a validity proves like they can actually be pretty high frequency matching engines that use like something like StarkX or validity proof in a ZK rollup. like DYDX did, that actually proves that the assets that are trading are there, and you can still have like pretty fast trading conducted in this way. And you can actually have hybrid versions where you're using like a hardware security module instead. So you're trusting the hardware security module, like the chip manufacturer, to create proper trusted enclaves. So you can have really high frequency trading, and you're not necessarily trusting FTX, but you're still trusting a manufacturer. So there are technological solutions to this problem, and they all sound great, but it doesn't take away from the fact that institutional capital is gonna pull back from the space. Regulators are going to come in, and the whole space is going to look a lot unsexier for a considerable time. So we are still going to have to fight our way through this. I don't think it just means that, oh, this is the proof that the centralized exchanges were bad. Kaboom, bull market for DeFi. I mean, we're all unfortunately in this boat together. Like, we had the scorpion on the back of our toad backs, and it did sting us, and now we're sinking together. And it's gonna, like, I think that there's a lot of opportunity in a bear market. Like, this is a lot of players are perhaps going to pull back, disappear. So for the people who stay, this is a great time to expand your territory. And it's not only for companies, it's also for regular people in the space is trying to break into the industry. Like, now there's I mean, there might be less jobs, but this is an excellent time to get into the space, learn how things work. So when the next bull market comes and other people really haven't been here, you're going to have a head start of like a year of, let's not be too bearish, like maybe it turns around in 6 months, but you're given an opportunity here to get in where other people are getting out and learn more than other people. And when the bull market comes, you'll be the guy who knows the latest stuff about recent protocols and tools. You can be the shaman and the spirit guide of the next bull market. So there's a lot of opportunity, and there's also, if you're trying to allocate to assets, there are still protocols that make sense out there that you can get interested in. You can get into these DAO, like for example in DAOs. I think that if you want to get a position inside a DAO as a leading influencing member in the DAO, like, great opportunity now that momentum is perhaps going to tone down a little bit. So it's horrible. It's a horrible situation to be in, but if you instead of doing what everyone else is doing, just by like decreasing your own interest and your own engagement in the space by like 80%, if you instead double it and focus 100% more on learning things in the space, then it's like you're taking a leveraged position and buying an asset in the bear market. You can do that both with your social capital and your financial capital, and that's where people make the most returns.
No, Eric, thank you so much for that thorough response. I think I had a follow-up question, and I think you answered half of my question in the previous response. But I was going to ask you around like the proof of solvency that we talked about, or you talked about briefly, and generally, if you were to design like a DEX, what's like a more elegant way to go about it? Because I think on one hand, like centralized limit order book is probably the best way to have price discovery, and I haven't really seen any on-chain order book models that work really well. What works on-chain really well is something like an RFQ or an AMM type model. But then again, I'm not sure if that's the right way to go about price discovery. And on the other hand, if you do add order book engine, then basically you're once again relying on some kind of custody, be it a smart contract custody or using some kind of hardware and such. So I was curious, because I think with proof of solvency, you have proof of reserves, but then you also need to prove that your liabilities are usually less than or equal to the reserves you own. So I was curious to hear, like, how do you normally think about that? And what's a good trade-off in terms of a design where do you think we need to build blockchains that scale to support limit order books? Or do you think having an off-chain order book combined with some kind of proof of solvency is a good trade-off to build a good way to trade to enable trading?
Yeah, so I think that you can actually reach very high throughput for something like DYDX. The reason that DYDX is slow is because they're ZK rollup, and they put all their the data that's required to for the thing to be completely decentralized, so that everyone can withdraw their assets from the exchange without trusting sort of the sequencer in the system. Like, you can build a solution that is really, really high performant if you had access to larger data banks. So you have, for example, in Ethereum with dank sharding, for example, you have proposals where you're going to have a specific block space for these data blobs that it's just data blobs that you post data blobs on the Ethereum blockchain that it doesn't contain any information that layer 1 nodes actually need to do any computation on. So because they are like really computationally friendly, it's okay to have more of them. So this is sort of the dank sharding proposal. This is why some people are joking that the next step for Ethereum is not to be a blockchain, but a blob chain. So blob chains are these sort of gray blobs of non-computationally intensive data. And if you scale the system in this way, well, scale and scale, like if you architect the system in this way, and there are a bunch of other projects that are also trying to solve the data availability problem this way, like Celestia, for example, and there's also one called Eigenlayer, which uses restaking from the Ethereum stakers to create a data availability layer. So if you can scale data availability, then you can build like solutions like ZK rollups that have very, very high performance, that can actually function like similar to a centralized exchange. So that would be one way that you could build a really, really scalable decentralized exchange. And also one interesting thing that I learned recently is that when I'm saying that you need you need the data for this thing to be decentralized, in something like Celestia, in order to be able to withdraw your assets, you don't actually need the data in all these data blobs. You can actually compute like a withdrawal proof just from the block headers. So it's not as like storage-wise intensive for regular users in the system as it may sound when you're dumping this much data on-chain. You just need the headers and perhaps your trading-specific data, and then you can sort of prove that you had assets in the system and you're allowed to withdraw them. So like using the trend for blockchains to scale data availability will unlock much higher throughput for decentralized exchanges. And then the other thing that I mentioned briefly was that you can also use, like I know that Avalanche, for example, has a project where they're gonna, like Emin Gun Sirer has always been interested in trusted enclaves as a solution to scale blockchains. Like that's not 100% decentralized, but it's like, it's more interesting than FTX at least. So there's like a hybrid version to use trusted hardware security modules. So that could be one way to run. Like then you run the entire business, like the entire programming logic of the exchange on a hardware security device. And what it allows you to do is that other people can remotely check that in this device, the open source code of the exchange is running in exactly that manner, and they haven't changed the code in any way. So you know what the code is going to do through guarantees given by the hardware security module. So that could be another way to get some more assurance around what an exchange is doing. I think that we have to try both these paths of completely on-chain exchanges scaled through data availability optimizations, and maybe hardware security modules can also be something to explore. I mean, and then there are also like in the short term, like now I'm talking about things that are going to take maybe a year or more to build. But in the immediate short term, what we need to do is just on the social layer, we need to basically shame exchanges that don't, like centralized exchanges that don't have any type of proof of reserves scheme. And when I'm saying proof of reserve schemes, it's basically just making an on-sign message that proves that you are in control over a bunch of wallets that show that you have hundreds of, like if you're a big exchange, you should be able to prove that you have 50,000 or whatever Bitcoins. So you can, if you're in control of those wallets, you can generate an on-chain, well, not you can generate a message from the on-chain data that proves that you are in control of X and X and X wallets. So this is what Binance did recently. Kraken has done this, but we need to, like, there's a bunch of exchanges that don't do it, and Binance just did it now recently because FTX got hacked. So we need to. I think that the way we should go about this is that if you are a cryptocurrency influencer, a journalist, or a podcaster, or whatever, if you're interviewing the operator of a centralized exchange, your first question should be, why don't you have a proof of reserve scheme? Like, why don't you have the tools to prove that you are in control of significant amounts of crypto assets? Could you just prove that on a regular basis? In the same way that we require that we're trying to at least to require this from Tether to show audits, and we would shame a stablecoin if they didn't show audits, and we do that for Tether. We should do the same thing on every single centralized exchange. It should be the first question, like, is this guy a scammer in this industry, or is he a good person? Well, let's look at his proof of reserve scheme. And like, proof of reserve schemes can come in maybe many shapes and flavors. There's not like one proof of reserve scheme that satisfies all the requirements. I think that's going to be like a moving target. So right now we're going to go and shame the industry, the participants that run centralized exchanges and custodians that don't have any proof of reserve schemes. And then once most people do, then the ones that don't will ask them, like, why aren't you doing that, or why do you have the worst proof of reserve scheme? So it'll be like a moving target of getting them to continuously improve their schemes. I think that this is the path that the industry is going to have to work now in light of this FTX news. And I had this conversation. This is so sad because I had this conversation with Nick Harter back in 2019, where we talked about proof of reserves, and it was just clear to me that proof of reserves is like one of the most important things in the crypto space. I think the reason that I was thinking about it then was because I was really worried about like the 21 million cap in Bitcoin. Like, if people can create exchanges and they're fractionally reserves, but people don't know about it, or they create wrapped Bitcoin and people don't prove the reserves, like FTX did. They had 16,000 Bitcoins on Solana, wrapped Bitcoin, that there was no Bitcoin underlying. So if we enforce proof of reserve schemes, we actually keep that the monetary supply in Bitcoin within, like, closer to the 21 million cap. Like, if we allow people to create paper Bitcoin and people treat them as the real Bitcoin, then we're actually creating, like, we're diluting the demand of Bitcoin all over these other instruments, and it actually inflates the cap of Bitcoin in at the M2 monetary supply level. So proof of reserve schemes has always been like super close to heart, and I remember that me and Nick were trying to influence exchanges then. Like, and Nick has this excellent website page on his personal website where he keeps track of every exchange that has done some proof of reserve scheme. So there's like a proof of reserve Hall of Fame on Nick's website. I'm talking about Nick Carter, by the way. So I think we need now, finally, we're going to see more of that. But it's like, it's what I said, like, the whole restaurant has AIDS, and now we're going to talk about table manners. We have to do it, but it's like, I wish that we had did it a couple of years ago, that we had people agreeing with us then.
No, I recall Nick's blog post around proof of reserves and sort of say they're like really. I think this might be a good time to maybe even bring those back up. I think this is actually very, very timely. Although I had a question on that though. Like, we can have proof of reserves, but then is there a way to even prove that those reserves exceed like liabilities that the exchange has? Like, sure, I can prove I have $10 billion in assets, but then what is to say that?
Yeah. So the standard here is that what you do is that you basically Merkleize all the customer accounts, and you give each user the ability. So what the exchange basically does is says, like, this is the hash of the root of a Merkle tree that includes all the liabilities that we have. And you can see here that when we tally all this up, then the total amount is $500 million, and you can look at the proof of reserves that we did cryptographically on the asset side, and you can see that the liabilities don't exceed. But how do you know cryptographic? How do you prove that this Merkle tree of liabilities that they didn't, like, how do you prove that they didn't exclude certain liabilities here? Like, how for example, one thing that every person can ask themselves is my balance included there, or did they exclude my balance? Like if everyone can verify that their balance is included in this liability Merkle tree, then everyone is included. So the way that you do is by basically sampling. So you give every single user the ability to check cryptographically that their balance has been included and their amount, the how much they have, like their liability to them, is included. So you can do that cryptographically. So when an exchange, for example, does a proof of reserve scheme, they send you the files that give you that shows that they own. That shows what they own on the asset side, and then on the liability side, they give each individual a way for them to check that their liability is at least included in the liability Merkle tree. So if enough people do this, let's say they have 1 million customers, and let's say that at least 500 people do this, then probabilistically it gets difficult for them to exclude like half of their liability side, because one of those 500 people that maybe do the effort of actually checking, what's the odds that they would end up in this half of the liability side that they try to hide? So they would have to be very like sneaky and clever to be able to hide something, any liability like this. So that's like the standard way of doing it. Like you give every single person an ability to stick prove. I don't know what it's called in English. In Swedish, we say stick test, which means like you sample a small portion of it and you check that liability is there. And if enough people do that, actually, this is the same principle, but behind how we're going to scale data availability. They also use like data availability sampling. So it's like established norm for verifying that a large body exists by sampling it at many different places. So that's sort of how a proof of reserve scheme works. But you can also complement this with proper audits from like Big Four auditing firms.
No, Eric, thank you for that. I think that's something similar I was thinking about, is basically using perhaps smart contract custody combined with which basically acts as your proof of reserves, and then you do proof of liabilities using Merkle trees to verify that your liabilities are less than or equal to the reserves. I was curious to hear if would you categorize this as a hybrid solution, or would you still say this is a centralized way of doing it? Or I was also wondering if the data availability text you spoke about earlier, like Celestia and such, could they be in any way leveraged to prove these liabilities not exceeding the reserves?
I mean, you always need a hybrid version if you're dealing with fiat accounts. We can do completely decentralized, automatic proof of reserve schemes for what's on the blockchain. That's not the difficult part. But when you have fiat liabilities, that's when you need a hybrid approach of these liability Merkle trees and auditing firms.
No, that makes sense. I think Grogo, he had a question. Actually, yeah, I'll let you go first.
Hey, Varun, real
Go on.
quick, I wanted to introduce Alex, aka Shillin Villain. We know each other from the NFT side, but he's a legend and an amazing host, and just wanted to introduce him. Alex, what's up?
Yeah, I'm just listening in. I heard the Merkle tree. I was like, oh, I can provide feedback. But I'm just listening. I'm enjoying the conversation. Thanks for letting me come up here and speak.
Oh my God, thanks for coming up here. Yeah, chime in whenever. But Grogu, yeah, you have a question.
Hey, this question's for Eric. I've actually been following him for a long time, since 2017.
Hey, Grogu. I
how's
know
it going, man?
you're one of my most appreciated followers.
Yeah, been a long time, but glad to actually speak to you for once for a long time. I actually had a question. I've been an avid user of DYDX as well, also AMMs on Uniswap and multiple Ethereum applications. Now, the one thing that I found really, really confusing is when exchanges start using stuff like cross margin, which was very common in FTX as well. And what gets confusing is the actual tracking of the price of the asset, because you have mixed assets in a bucket now. So I felt like there is no solution to this. And even if you try to build any kind of exchange with any kind of cross margins or anything, it would become a bit of an issue. But what could possibly resolve it if you just have a single asset only, which only tracks the price of that one asset. And that way you can also track like the debt to collateral ratio. because I do think the proof of reserve isn't enough. I think you also need to find a way to see what asset is kind of in danger. It's kind of like similar to what MakerDAO does with all their assets, but maybe 10 times better. Just want to see what your take is on that, Eric.
So if I'm understanding like your question correctly, is it that you have you basically collateralize your positions with one asset type, and then you have a bunch of different trading going on in other assets, and there's basically just oracles that are reporting on what the prices of those are, or am I sort of misunderstanding what
Yeah,
you're
the
asking?
Oracle part. So I'm trying to see like if there's a way to like, because MakerDAO does it with like each bunch. So they have ETH A, ETH B, ETH C, and each position has its own ratio, which you can see you can only take, and interest rates as well. This is not the case with a lot of central exchanges where they just allow you to bucket everything together. FTX did this too. So did DYDX with cross margin, and you can't actually get a proper price of the asset because they're all mixed now. So even if you do try to do like, let's say if I open up a leverage position with cross margin, my liquidation price is not actually easy to track versus a single asset, right? So I think that's a major problem, which is actually giving the actual exchange advantage to actually take advantage of retail investors. So I personally think cross margin should be completely illegal. It shouldn't be allowed because it's just too confusing. So just kind of wanted to, that's what I was trying to get at.
I don't have any specific takes on it. I mean, cross margin is pretty common on centralized exchanges. It does work. I don't necessarily see like why it should be illegal. I mean, depends on if you get good Oracle price feeds. If the Oracle price feeds are legitimate, I mean, I'm not sure if I necessarily understand. Like you say that they have mixed price feeds, like the data, that the price feeds are mixed, but I don't really understand why they would be mixed. It's still coming from specific oracles that report on specific data feeds.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is like, okay, so if you have mixed assets, you have 3 assets in as a cross margin position, the liquidation price is not as predictable as it is per ETH, right? So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. But I mean, that's just the model that you've chosen to trade in. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to use cross margin, right? Isn't it usually like you can choose between isolated and cross margin?
Well, yeah, I mean, DYDX didn't have that option. They only allowed it to. Well, you can do single assets as well, but yeah, I was just trying to see if there's like any solution to that. If you think there is anything that you think exchanges could do now that would actually make it a little bit easier to track prices.
Yeah, no, sorry, I don't have any great response there. Actually, I would have to look at how that system works in DYDX.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll let you know if I find something.
Guys, I have a question. What do you say to people who know nothing about crypto, are watching all of this unfold and thinking, why should I believe in crypto at all?
I understand them. I understand them because I think that it for me, it requires all of my experience in crypto, all of my knowledge to be able to identify the parts of this industry that isn't a sham. Like the reason that I can know, for example, that a ZK rollup isn't a scam, and the optimistic rollup isn't a scam, but there's so much stuff out there, and there's like technical analysis and centralized companies that do fishy shit, even the biggest one that we thought were legit. Like it becomes extremely difficult to find these niches of like these islands of valid things. And I mean, the FTX and the FTX scandal is just such a big part of all of this. And now we're finding out more stuff. Like, for example, just like an example. So when they had losses, Alameda had losses, one thing that they did to prop up their balance sheet was that they had owner rights on the Serum smart contract on Ethereum that had, so the ERC20 token of Serum, that's decentralized exchange on Solana. It had a ERC20 counterpart on the Ethereum network. That they had the minting rights on that contract, and they just printed more Serum tokens out of thin air, and no one noticed it. So this was one of the biggest DeFi coins that we know about. They just printed more tokens out of thin air, and this is supposed to be on the most transparent ledger. That there's tons of companies that are like Messari and Coinmetrics that are supposed to be looking at the balances of these things. And no one noticed that someone printed millions of serum out of thin air and put it on their balance sheet just to prop up how much leverage they were allowed to take. So it's not only the centralized exchanges. It's not only like the FTX. It's also happening in the DeFi coins. Were also pulled along in this, and then a bunch of lenders look now like. I don't think that BlockFi and Genesis were intended to be scams or rugs. I don't think that they were scams or rugs. I just think that they are lenders that ended up failing because they underappreciated perhaps the reflexivity in the nascent crypto market, and they were able to do things in the bull market that they couldn't do in the bear market anymore. But they weren't scams or rugs. But how are you supposed to know that as a regular person? Like, it just looks like the lenders were a scam, the centralized exchanges were a scam, the DeFi coins got printed out of thin air, they were a scam, and many of them were just like pump and dump farm tokens. Like that seems like a scam. And then they were one of the biggest stable coins was a scam. The UST Luna was basically a broken experiment. So how do you even identify the small? Like, I can completely understand why some people just become Bitcoin maximalist and say, I just want to find one asset that isn't a scam, and I'm going to put it safely somewhere, and I'm just going to accumulate more of that asset. I completely understand the people who think like that, because crypto is not looking great right now. Like, I still think that what we said here, like the DeFi is the solution to these insolvencies, and that if you are a Bitcoin maximalist, then you're going to have a bunch of centralized financial applications around you, because Bitcoin doesn't really allow for decentralized finance. So, but I can completely understand the people that feel like right now, I just want to put my stuff on a cold wallet. I want to save more of this asset that's sort of like digital gold. That's simple. I understand it. But I mean, long term, let's hope that DeFi is able to change this. But so that's sort of my perspective at the moment on the situation.
Alex, what's your take?
On DEXs versus sexes? Yeah, I really like the thought that we're blowing up all these centralized exchanges, and you can go check the volume. The volume doesn't lie. My favorite influencer lies, my favorite marketplace lies, but the volume never lies.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, maybe I'm rugging, but real quick, yeah, I did notice there's a lot more volume on DEXs going forward, so I am looking forward to the future of that.
Varun, what were you
Nicole,
saying?
let me know if you can hear me, or if you don't. If
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? I think he can't hear us.
And yeah, I really like Bear's take on. I think he's saying Bitcoin is now just being more used as a store of value. This whole utility thing, my expectations of like the blockchain, it definitely, like, the technology exceeded the realistic market demand. I think that's what I kind of saw with the price action for the past year. But if you cut out that last year, you can see, I think we're pretty much back at base level. I'm really excited, and I'm also noticing. I guess the DEXs are really starting to pop off, and every single centralized exchange is not working with one another. So they're all trying to take each other down. Every single time I see, this one's now halted, withdrawals, every single centralized exchange immediately dog piles on. I don't know. I just don't even understand the purpose of a centralized exchange other than outside of like liquidity. Like, outside of that, I mean, Bear, can you educate me what the purpose of a centralized exchange is going forward?
Yeah, so it's Berica, but I'll forgive that. No, so I mean, there has to be some way for people to send like, most people are in fiat currency, and then they want to get into crypto. So there has to be someone to bridge fiat assets to crypto assets, and that is why centralized exchanges exist. after you have acquired your crypto, you can withdraw them and you can go trade on a DEX. But these centralized exchanges will still grow as long as there needs to be a bridge between fiat and crypto, and they have an incentive to sort of keep their users there. So they try to build all the tools and stuff for people to stay inside their ecosystem. And if you look at Binance, for example, they're even building they know that some people want to withdraw to on-chain, so they built Binance chain, like the Binance BNB chain, so that people still stay within their centralized ecosystem, just with a decentralized name on it, like decentralized only in name. So I think that because fiat is the problem, like people onboard from fiat and then they get trapped on these centralized exchanges. There are ways to build, we talked about it, like there are ways for people to build hybrid versions where like you can get onboarded, like you can deposit your fiat to a decentralized ZK rollup or a decentralized exchange, basically. But after that step is done, then you're now completely in the decentralized. So all your coins become stable coins immediately, and everything is traded is traded on chain with perfect on chain history. So like there's a way to build hybrid solutions that immediately take people into a decentralized exchange world, but fiat is the reason that we have so many centralized components in this world still.
Eric, can I ask you a question there?
Sure.
So I was going to ask you around your sentiment around the KYC aspect, because I think on one hand it seems like adding any KYC component on top of a decentralized protocol, it seems like it's going against the ethos of DeFi and crypto. But at the same time, if you were to ever touch fiat, it seems like KYC is inevitable. At the same time, I also feel like many market makers who are quoting would be incentivized to quote much tighter if they knew who the counterparty was, because then they don't need to worry about toxic flows and such. So in a way, it almost seems like KYC may not be the worst of the ideas to have, but at the same time, I'm also not sure if that's an encroachment of privacy for end users. So there's this dilemma where if you can't do KYC, then you can't do fiat, and if you cannot do fiat, then you're basically at the mercy of centralized venues to do the fiat off-ramping first before they can touch anything DeFi related. So I was curious, where do you sit on that?
Yeah, so I sort of have an maybe not a super productive activist take on KYC. I'm not sure if it's going to be helpful to people, but the way that I think about it is that KYC in general, the whole KYC industry is a giant scam, basically, because if you are an illegitimate person, and I've actually tried to do this. I like maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I just tried to sign up on. I tried to sign. Like I was studying computer science, and I was on the dark net a lot, and I discovered these places where you can basically buy fake IDs or photoshopped passports and Photoshop proof of address and everything, and it only costs like 50 euros, so you get like expert photoshopped version of the ID of a person. So it costs 50 euros to get an account, and I tried this on a gambling site because they do ask you for photographs of your passport. So I did that. I got an account there. I was like, oh shit, it works. It costs 50 euros, and then you are now a KYC person. So for the criminals, it costs them 50 euros, and then for all the other people, what they get, all the other people that weren't intending to do any scam, they get the surveillance state invading on their financial privacy. So they get no privacy just because. I mean, and they don't catch the criminals either. Like the criminals are circumventing this by fake IDs, which cost them just 50 euros. And all the rest of the world then gets their surveillance destroyed by the surveillance state. So what is I just think that we should get rid of the KYC system as much as we can. We still have regulators that are going to try to impose this on us. We should try to get away from this as much as we can, setting up businesses in different regulations that have looser laws on this. I don't see any purpose of the KYC system. I hate it. I think it's a scam. That's my thoughts.
Wow. Alex, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, it sounds to me that you think we need less regulation. I'm in that camp as well. We're probably going to see more regulation though, because one person fuck up. Everyone has to wear diapers, right? One person poops the bed. Everyone's wearing more diapers. We've
Look,
got that.
yeah,
Yeah.
look, I'm not super. I don't care so much. Like I care when regulation hurts the little person. So I care when regular people aren't able to invest in what they want, and when they aren't able to trade or access financial tools as they should be able to, and they aren't able to tap into financial innovation, and they're being surveilled by surveillance state. That's what I don't like. But if you have regulation that go after, for example, centralized exchanges and say you're a centralized exchange, you need to prove that you have the assets. So you have a regulation that imposes proof of reserve schemes. I'm a libertarian, but I'm not a diehard libertarian that will say that it's bad every time that the governments impose anything. So there's, in my opinion, good regulation and bad regulation. The bad regulation is the one that hurts the small people and inhibits their financial freedom, and there's good regulation, or at least better regulation, that go after the big centralized entities in this world and make sure that they at least do what they should be doing to make sure that users are safe.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah. So you think there's only going to be regulation on the centralized exchanges following this? You don't think the consumer will be affected? Do you think that the banks, the brick and mortar banks, are regulated in the same fashion as these centralized crypto exchanges are going to be regulated?
Oh, no. I think that they are going to regulate us in a completely terrible way, and they're going to misunderstand what they should be doing, and it's going to hurt the little man, as they always do. So I'm not optimistic that they're going to do good regulation and avoid bad regulation. I'm just saying that, I'm not unilaterally averse to regulation. I specifically don't like bad regulation, and I think that the bad regulation is the one that hurts the little man. But if I have to give a prediction how it's going to pan out, then I would say that it's probably not going to pan out favorably. So we have to try to circumnavigate this using blockchains and tools to get our financial freedom.
So, Eric, a follow up there. So one is, how do you think it's going to pan out, and B, what would be one interesting way that you think could be a good trade off? Because at the end of the day, I feel like there's not going to be 100% winners or losers. There'll be some sort of compromise over time. The question becomes what's that middle ground going to look like? And I was curious if you had any thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I don't really, because I'm a computer scientist, blockchain researcher, trader. In terms of being able to predict regulation and the way that it's going to pan out, I've never really been any good at. So I don't want to poison the minds of people with my basic bitch takes on it, basically. So I'll just avoid opining on it. But I mean, like we said in the intro, I was working with the Human Rights Foundation, writing guides basically for how. I was writing guides for people how to buy Bitcoin and crypto assets without leaving any trace, like with full privacy intact. So look, I'm not a big fan of the surveillance state, and I want to try to empower people with tools to avoid that. I think, like in my book, what is important is the liberty of individuals to be able to store the fruits of their labor securely and not have a state surveil their every single step of what they do with their financial means. That's how I think about what we should achieve in the world, and I'm not ashamed to say that I'm willing to fight for that cause using decentralized tools. I think that that's what brought people here. This is why we're here. If you don't feel like that feels like you're anti-state. Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm anti-state. This is why we're into crypto. I don't know why you other guys are here.
No, I 100% agree there. I think like crypto is like the most neutral and depoliticized money there is. So and I think if you want money that cannot be manipulated by anybody else or any big governments around the world, then crypto is still
And look, we used to have these freedoms. Like we used to have cash. People paid for their things in cash. So it's a normal thing. Like privacy is not weird. It's a normal thing. People desire privacy in all types of elements in their lives, We used to have good financial privacy with cash. Now that is being taken away from us, and that's our obligation to fight for it.
All right, I see two hands. Alex and then Grogu.
Okay, so you're saying the purpose of crypto blockchain, you're saying is for privacy, where I would say it's a public ledger. I think that the transactions are supposed to be extremely transparent, but also I wanted to say, yeah, self-sovereignty is definitely a real use case for these cryptos, and I think going forward, we've got to remove the centralized exchange piece, in my opinion. I want to hear your thoughts on. So you're saying I was not aware of this ZK onboarding ramp, but could you share can you go into more details on how I could get my fiat into crypto using this ZK?
No, so it doesn't exist at the moment. I'm just saying that if you want to remove centralized exchanges from the cryptocurrency ecosystem, how are you going to onboard people from fiat into the cryptocurrency ecosystem? That's very hard because people have fiat. Like, how can they get into crypto? So and you know, I've written guides about how you can do this actually. If you want to do it in a decentralized way. There used to be, like in Sweden, for example, there used to be local bitcoins. You could go on local bitcoins and you could trade cash basically for bitcoins, and now you had bitcoins. But it's increasingly hard to even get like that much cash out of an ATM. And for the person who receives the cash, it's like, what is he going to do with it? Like, you have to get that back into the digital system, and it's just very, very difficult. So local bitcoins has also imposed KYC on all the trades, so you can't even be a Bitcoin like a Bitcoin OTC merchant selling Bitcoin for cash on the street without doing KYC on your counterparties anymore. So I tried to buy Bitcoin anonymously in Sweden. I didn't find out a good way to do it. So in the end, the scheme I had to use was basically to buy RuneScape gold. So RuneScape is a computer game. You can buy gold there with you can use PayPal, for example, and then you can buy RuneScape gold. And then you create another character in the game and you send the RuneScape gold to your other character. And then this new character, you use that character to then sell the RuneScape gold for Bitcoin. That was an anonymous way to take your digital fiat and get it into crypto. But I mean, most people aren't going to do that. Most people are just want to pay with their digital fiat, and they want to get crypto. So this requires centralized exchanges. What we don't want is then for that for the people who bought crypto using a centralized exchange to stay inside a centralized exchange that doesn't put their trades on chain in any verifiable way. So what an exchange can do is that they can, for example, they can funnel the users that converted their fiat into crypto directly to the centralized exchange, like DYDX is an example of that, a zero knowledge based exchange that all the trades are verifiable on chain. But then you need to build sort of so DYDX would have to go and get a license, like a broker license, basically, to be able to run an exchange trading, handling fiat also. So we don't have these mergers between decentralized exchanges that are also able to on-ramp and take in, like have a bank account and receive fiat deposits. That we don't have. So that's sort of the thing that I was describing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. By the way, Alex had to go because he also had a scheduling conflict and started his space right now. But the other way that I saw a lot of people get in to crypto without transferring their fiat to crypto was by working in the space, building an audience, and then getting paid in crypto, like literally opening up a MetaMask and just having all the funds that they were earning sent there. So I've seen that too. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting the creative ways that people can get into crypto. Although, you know, of course, what's going on now is probably going to make a lot of people hesitate. Grogu, you had a question.
Hi. So regarding, I think Eric just mentioned earlier that he was working with Starknet, or he's on the foundation. The question is regarding Bitcoin. Now, currently the model that we have is wrapped Bitcoin, which we all know is not probably ideal for DeFi. Is there a better model that is being built under with Starkware or some kind of zero knowledge proof right now that you can share with us? And don't feel obligated to answer. If you can't, you can't. But do you have any idea if there's a better system that is better than the current one right now?
Yes, I mean we had so the question is about like how to enable decentralized finance for Bitcoin, and the current way we do it is just by putting Bitcoin in a multi-sig wallet basically, and then the multi-sig wallet creates tokens on a DeFi chain that are redeemable for real Bitcoin if they send it back. So that this is a centralized way to just give people Bitcoin Chuck E. Cheese tokens, basically Bitcoin IOUs. So there was one company that was doing something different where it was called TBTC. So what they would do is that they would require collateral to be posted on the so if they have Bitcoin tokens on the Ethereum side, the same value would need to be locked up also in Ether to collateralize that Bitcoin derivative. And you could do this completely cryptographically, and it was pretty decentralized, so that if, for example, if the people who put Bitcoin in the multi-sig wallet on the Bitcoin side try to steal those Bitcoin, then their collateral of Ether on the Ether side would automatically get auctioned away. So it wasn't reliant on oracles or anything like that. It was actually a decentralized system to get Bitcoin tokens inside of Ethereum, and these tokens were called TBTC. And I did some experiments trying to show people like this. I mean, these Bitcoins were basically as secure as any Bitcoin wallet in a mobile Bitcoin wallet that uses SPV proofs. So it's one of the higher cryptographic standards for securing Bitcoin. It was almost that secure. However, the problem was that it's a very inefficient way to create synthetic Bitcoins by having both the Bitcoin and a corresponding amount of Ether have to be locked up in order to create decentralized Bitcoin tokens that you can use in DeFi and in ZK rollups and all that kind of stuff. What has happened, so if you look at like TBTC version 2, what they have instead opted for, which is a little bit disappointing, but I completely understand it, is that they just have a super large multi-signature scheme that is securing the Bitcoin. So you'll have a person, sends one Bitcoin into a multi-signature wallet on Bitcoin, and that creates a token on Ethereum, a Bitcoin token on Ethereum. But in order for that person to like unlock his Bitcoin on the Bitcoin side, then it requires thousands and thousands of signatures of a network of people that are all running independent signers using multi-party computation. So the solution to creating wrapped Bitcoin, to sum it up shortly, is just to create a giant multi-sig. That seems to be the scalable direction that the industry is working towards at the moment.
Do you think a zero knowledge proof could do anything to actually improve that in any way?
I mean, zero knowledge proofs this is a cryptographic term. For example, like ZK rollups don't actually use zero knowledge proofs. They use validity proofs. Zero knowledge refers something else in cryptography, basically, where you prove the existence that you have data without sharing what that data is in the proof. This is not exactly what ZK proofs do. Like they have cryptographic math that are sort of similar to that, but it's a misnomer to call it zero knowledge proofs. And when you are making a signature that proves the signatures of a bunch of other signatures through multi-party computation, this is just as much zero knowledge as a ZK rollup. Like that, this is basically zero knowledge, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, zero knowledge-ish tech can be used to aggregate tons and tons of signatures. That's what ZK rollups do, and that's the same. This is a very similar thing, like what I'm talking about, how to make like very large signatures efficient on Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Berica, thank you so much. This was a very insightful, enlightening space. Hope to have you on again.
Sure.
If there's anything you'd like to end with, any message, please share it now. If not, I'm going to play the club music.
No, I think I'm good.
All right, you want the music?
Yeah, let's spin it.
All right. Guys, thanks for being here. This is the Hash Flows, the DeFi State with me and Varun. We'll be here next week, probably the same time, unless our guests can't make it. Then we'll switch the time. But we have guests like this every week. We talk about everything DeFi, no limits. We like to mix it up. If there are any guests you'd like to recommend to us, message me privately. But again, that was Berica Wall with the DeFi State.